Wednesday on TNN. It's good to be Vince.
We're just a good old boy to make it dark. Ain't running around on you. Give me just a one more last chance before you say we're through.
Vince Gill on the road with Joan L. Musser, Dawn Sears, and the guy with the get steel, Junior Brown.
Just doing my job on the highway patrol.
The Road, Wednesday on TNN.
George, I want to ask you about a few other people here. You became a big star. And you were touring one time with Buck Owens. And you thought he was ugly, didn't you?
Yeah, he wasn't the best looking guy in the world.
You remember what you called him?
Oh, no, I ain't getting into that. Read the book, read the book.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know whether we have any Buck Owens fans here, but to George, Buck Owens was gizzard lip.
No. No, me and Buck was always very close friends.
Right. But there was a tour where the two of you argued about who was going to close, which is the star-spotted show.
Well, you know, actually, I never did care about closing the show. In fact, I always asked the promoter to let me open up because I wanted the people ready to go, you know, and not wore out. But this was one of the times I was having fun. And we were on about an 8-10 day tour together out in Canada and Northwest. And I'm not sure of the town, but I said, Buck, you've been closing I'll just take playing with him, you know. I said, Buck, you've been closing all the shows every night. Let me be a star tonight. Let me close. And, he said, we can't do that. I said, well, you better let me close tonight. And he wouldn't do it. He said, no, we can't do that, George. Okay. So I went out on stage. I went out on stage, and I never sung one of my songs. I sung everything he had in his catalog.
You know what? I read that,
Of course, that wasn't the nicest thing to do, you know, because people wanted to hear him sing it, you know, his songs.
When I read it, I wondered how you happened to know the lyrics to all his songs.
Oh, well,
you must have been a
back in those days when, you know, it seems like when you was younger, you could remember songs, you know. You can't remember them too much anymore.
The road gets boring, doesn't it?
Very boring, yeah.
The only fun you're really having is performing.
Right.
And traveling gets boring night after night.
That's the reason I was telling you earlier in the interview, that's the way we looked at it back in those days. It was just one big party, and once you got on stage, it was that's what it's all about.
You think that because the road night after night was so boring that it caused people to wreck hotel rooms, drink more whiskey, that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. I think letting off steam or whatever.
George, I'm going to have an old friend of mine join us here. The man who named you Possum. I'm sure a lot of people wonder where that came from.
One of my very dearest friends.
And this man is T. Tommy Cottrell. Tommy and I used to work together at WSM. We were disc jockeys together. So let's go back and talk to Tom about how he created the Possum.
George had an album. It was the first one I ever saw. I was in Shreveport at KCIJ in Shreveport, and Biff Colley called and said, are you riding George Jones's records for Pappy Daly? And I said, well, I'm playing it occasionally and getting a few requests. He said, well, he has this new album. I said, I got the album. And he said, help him as much as you can. And I said, well, sure, be glad to do it, because Pappy was a friend of mine, too. And the album cover, they must have put it on by hand, you know, it looked like that, because it was discolored, and all the covers were like that on that particular album. And George in those days wore his hair in a burr haircut, which was very popular back then. And I looked at it and thinking of Little Pogo, the little comic strip by Mr. Kelly about the Everglades animals. Pogo was the little possum, and he had an alligator buddy and a raccoon buddy. And I couldn't call him Pogo, but he did remind me of the little possum because of the discoloration of his hair. It was black and white and gray mostly, and not beautiful gray like it is now, just a discolor like a possum. And his little eyes are round. And I thought, well, he reminds me of Pogo. I can't call him Pogo. I'm going to call him Possum. And other disc jockeys picked up on it. People got a kick out of it. But the Possum got unhappy about me calling him Possum. The word got back to him someplace. And he said, who in the world is this no good calling me Possum? Where does he get off? I'll wait till I see him, I'll box his ears or something to that effect, as only Possum would say. And, but he got over it. And, you know, of course, I love him to death, and I think he's the greatest country singer who ever lived. There are three singers who are the greatest to me, and that's Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra, and George Jones in their particular fields. Nobody's ever been better, and as far as I'm concerned, we'll never get any better.
You know, we could be calling you George Pogo
He's
Jones.
also the cause of me having to wear these sunglasses now.
Why is that?
Because he called me beady-eyed. I've had a complex all these years.
But that caught on. In fact, I used to use it all the time. I picked it up from Tommy.
Well, for a long time, I thought it was you. It was between you or him. One
No, I
that
stole
started.
that from him.
So it got me confused.
Who created the no-show Jones thing?
Well, it just happened. No, those during the bad days, and really, I'm not trying to deny any of it, but there was a lot of it pumped up on top of the few days that I did miss by some of the people that I was involved with, managing me and booking me and what have you. And they knew the state of mind I was in. They knew that I wasn't going to be there, and they would book other dates on the same date. They'd have me somewhere else just to get the front money in, you know.
Yeah, if you book an act, you have to pay 50% up front.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Sometimes not quite as much. 2,500, 3,000. They would give earnest money, and they had me booked all over the world there, and they had me looking a lot worse than the dates that I actually missed, which I did miss a lot of dates, but not near the dates that they assumed I did.
George, didn't promoters also, knowing your reputation, run ads in the local press and announce that George Jones was coming to town without ever even booking you?
That was a lot of that going on.
And as I understand it, the show would start, and after people got drunk, he would announce, it sounds like a dance.
Well, you know, he sold his drinks, and even though he knew he would have to give back the door money.
After he announced that you weren't coming.
But he's done got a night of drink sales, you know, that made him pretty well off there for a night's work of not having nobody booked there to start with, you know.
And I guess if they're having
And these things did go on. They went on. Things like that went on a lot back in those days with a lot of artists.
George, I want you to tell me, and I'll tell you why, the lawnmower story. And the reason I'm trying to clear this up is because in Tammy's book, she mentioned that this happened when you lived at the plantation house down in Florida. I've even heard that it happened in Nashville. When I picked up your book, I read it happened in Texas.
Well, I've been on a couple of week binge or a couple of months, whatever it was, and so when I came home, well, they all knew everything I'd done while I was gone and where I was at and this and that and the other. And when I got home, well, they had prepared for me. They hid my pickup truck, they hid my cars, and they hid everything that I had that had a motor in it. And talked my brother-in-law Dud coming down and watching me until I straightened up. And I laid, it was a Sunday morning. It always happens on Sunday, you know, when you don't have a drink and you need one. So I was wanting to get up I was wanting to get out of there and get a drink because I was feeling awful bad. And so I waited and waited, and 2 or 3 hours passed, and I'd say, Lord, and I couldn't find no transportation. I looked out my bedroom window, and I saw this little 10-horsepower Cub Cadet sitting out there. And it was just sitting there as pretty as you please. Man, that's the prettiest sight I ever seen in my life. And my brother was on the other far end of the house in the kitchen, and I was on the other end in my bedroom. So I said, well, I'll just sneak on that little booger and get down to the cutoff up there and where I could catch me a ride and on into town. I said, then I got to thinking, no, if they took all my cars and everything else, surely there ain't no key in it. Well, there was a key in it. And it got me down to where I wanted to go, and then I got down there, everybody must have knew I was home, because nobody gave me a ride. Then I walked a couple of miles, and I finally got a ride, and went into Beaumont, stayed on a bench for 2 more weeks. I went in and bought a 98 Oldsmobile. It was gold colored, and I drove around for 2 weeks, they said, saying, how do you like my red Buick? All kind of stupid things like this are in the book.
Apparently, from what I've read, the marriage was troubled by your drinking.
Well, we drove to the chapel. I had a filth between my legs, and one of them big leader set them up laying down there close by, and she didn't seem to mind it then.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not going to tell you all of it. You got to read the book.
Okay. I'm going to show you some videotape of an interview I did with Tammy. And the subject is George Jones. You told me, in fact, it's in your book, you deny that you ever shot at Tammy.
Never did.
Okay, let's roll. Could we roll that piece?
But when he's drinking, he turns completely into a madman. He liked to play with guns, and he would shoot guns in the middle of the night. He shot up the bathroom one night when I was laying in the bed with him and Georgette. With a 30-30 deer rifle, he shot the tiles off the bathroom walls, and us laying in the bed together. And I'm, you know, with a 6-month-old baby girl, so just he was Jekyll and Hyde, as the old saying goes.
Did he ever take a shot at you?
Yeah.
I don't even believe I had a gun. I never, back in those days, especially during the time we were married, I never went hunting or anything like that. Heck, we were on the road most of the time. No, I don't even hunt now. I'm not in. I got a bunch of guns now, but I got them. Look out, Nancy. But they're all in a case and they're brand new. I've had them a long time now, and they've never been fired even. And no, that's not true. That's not true at all. I was a little bit of what you know everybody knows I was.
Did Tammy have you committed at one point in your marriage?
Well, this was back at the time, as she says, that I did all this rifle shooting, and about the only thing I'd done was I didn't tear a house up. I tore the living room up. I threw a bottle into the TV set. I knocked 2 or 3 or 4 lamps over. I might have broke a coffee table, something like that, but it never got out of that one room.
Are you talking about the house?
There was no guns involved.
Are you talking about the house in Florida?
Right. I left there or to go work or go uptown, or I did something. And when I came back, the whole entire house was almost a wreck. And I know for a fact that I got nowhere near out of the living room.
Well, I think we're talking about...
Somebody went in there and set it up, something was tore up bad in every room.
I think, and this is the house we're talking about, it's called the Plantation, wasn't it? You had a country music park
right
next door to it.
Right.
And I think in her book she accused you of wrecking this house on one of your binges.
Well, I don't have to lie now, so I don't know why I should. So I'm not. I tore up the living room, the den, what you call the front of the house. And I did break a lot of lamps and things like that, but I went nowhere else upstairs or anywhere else in that house. And I shot no rifles.
Did she have you committed at this point?
Well, she talked me into going and talking to this doctor, mainly because I was pretty sick at the time when I straightened up a little. And I went down there. Well, she signed a paper to have them keep me there, which I couldn't. You couldn't get out on your own accord.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I stayed there a week or so.
Good morning.
How was the couch, okay?
The cocaine.
Oh, while I was in that state of mind, after roaming around Alabama and being out of work and not working, and really getting really low down, I was approached by Shug Baggett.
Now, did Shug Baggett somehow become your manager at this
Yeah.
point?
Well, at that time, I didn't care, you know. I wasn't really caring what happened, and he wanted to start a nightclub down in Printer's Alley and call it Possum Holler. And all he needed was a little money or so and stuff to get the thing started. And I thought it was a good idea. At the time, I had nothing else to do, so I did that. And after a couple of years of being involved there, and well, I mean a couple of months. I didn't mean 2 years. Like I say a while ago, I was about my lowest point of drinking. I wasn't eating. Was losing a lot of weight, and I couldn't do a show there at the Possum Holler Club that night. I didn't have the energy, and he took me back in the whiskey closet bin and told me to try something. I'd never seen it before, you know. He just said, "Sniff it. You'll sing all night," and I did. And it made me sick.
Did it get you hooked?
Bad, because I didn't take it like anybody with any sense would take anything. When I found something good, I just got all of it I could get. I was afraid I wasn't going to get no more. No, that's funny, but it's sad. But I didn't want to lose that feeling, though, and I just would overdo it.
Nancy is the lady who literally saved your life.
I have to give her 100% of that credit. I sure would.
When you met Nancy, I gather it was kind of love at first sight.
I guess you would call that.
Where'd you meet her?
Well, it was sort of an odd type of thing. My manager at the time, one of the managers I had at the time, had a girlfriend in Shreveport and invited her up to New York to fly up and come and spend a couple, 3 days and see our shows and whatever. And could she get a girlfriend? And so she did, and talked her into coming up with her, and we met in New York. It was love at first sight.
When Nancy met you, did she realize that you had an alcohol and cocaine problem?
Well, you reckon she could have overlooked that? No, I'm sure she did, because I was very bad. Well, I was getting better, but I wasn't. I was still weak and in pretty bad shape, and I'm sure she could see that.
Nancy has stuck with you when a lot of other women wouldn't have.
You wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe there was a woman in the world that was quite like her.
When you're outside and you won't budge.
There is no way in the short time we have on this television show to tell you all of the bizarre things that are in this book.
Oh, there's some goodies in there.
But I do want to talk a little bit about Muscle Shoals, Alabama,
Oh, my goodness.
and the mob. You felt, well, I read where your manager felt the only way to control you was to give you cocaine.
Probably so. He knew I would come back, and he could control me that way. I'm sure he might have had that in mind, yeah.
Somehow you fell in with the mob, or your manager fell in with the mob.
A lot of this, Nancy found out, and I did too there after I started knowing what was really going on. But right at first, when I went staying there and being managed out of there, I didn't know that they were actually into that stuff. I was still getting my source from here.
Okay.
But come to find out, which Nancy found out long before I did, that these people that was right around me, working with me, all at the same time, was selling the fire out of that stuff, you know.
They didn't.
And people were getting killed all around there, you know.
They didn't want Nancy to have control of you. They
Right.
were trying to cut her out of your life.
Right.
So they could control you. Didn't they put a life insurance policy and buy one on your life?
Yeah, they had me go get a physical, and like I could pass anything like that at that time. They got me straight a couple of days, though. It took me in there, and I took a physical, and I know that they, from what I understand, which I hate to mention things like that on TV, but you don't want to think that doctors and people like that get involved with these type of people, but, you know, it's all over the world, and it does happen. And they can get you an insurance policy through the right channels. And
Do you think that they took out this policy on your life with the idea of killing you and collecting the money?
no, I think they really thought that I was eventually going to die or kill myself, either by car, or, you know, and or just die, because I'd already got down to about 105 pounds, I think. In fact, when I went in, after I was in a while in the hospital, the doctor had a talk with me and told me that, he said, "George, I'm not lying to you at all. You couldn't have made it 2 more months." He said, "You wouldn't have lasted 2
Is
months."
this when they took you to, what, Hillcrest in,
Yeah.
in Birmingham?
Uh-huh.
And
So if I'd have just kept going like I was going, I would have been dead.
there was a guy named Big Daddy down there who liked you and Nancy.
Yeah, and we liked
Dina?
him, you know. And at first we didn't know that he was involved in all this mess.
Was he a nightclub owner?
I think so.
Anyway, because he tried to help you and Nancy and Adina, they killed him.
Right. Well, they killed him.
This is a fascinating story. And to get all of that, you're going to have to read the book. I have another tape I want to show you, and I'm going to play it because, George, it shows you at your worst, to graphically illustrate what we're talking about that they'll find in the book.
Right.
And you were wild.
It's very embarrassing, but it's the truth.
Is that okay to play?
That's the way the book is. It tells the truth.
Okay to play it?
Sure.
This is down I-65, just south of Nashville in 1982.
But you're not going to do that. Wait a minute, Mr. Jones. Now listen to me. I didn't know he's back here. He just pulls up. Now, I ain't going to have you start no mess with him.
Well, you tell him to get away from here.
All right, he ain't got nothing to do with me.
I'll go to jail with you, and where you going to go?
All right, you're going to go with me, but you ain't going to mess with him, all right? Come on, now leave him alone.
What the hell?
I don't know, but I don't
What have I done?
You are drunk.
I am not.
Yes, you are.
No, sir.
I want to come up here and give you some tests. I want you to leave this man alone, okay?
No, you tell him to leave me alone.
Okay, he's going to leave you alone. We're going to go up there where he can't see us. Come on. You want to lock the car up?
No, sir.
You don't want to lock it
No,
up?
he's going to run.
All right. Okay.
I haven't done nothing.
All right.
I ain't got nothing.
What's that right there? George, hey, come on then, George. Wait a minute, David. Hold up. All right, kid, I don't want you spraying up swing somebody.
George, you really look mean there.
You know, after looking at this, I really think that was set up.
Well, we thought it was kind of strange that they happened to be right there when that arrest occurred.
Yeah.
I do not have an explanation for that.
But they.
But I know in those days you couldn't spit on the sidewalk in Nashville without getting covered on TV.
That's right. But I'll tell you what. Not sorry it happened because it probably saved my life.
With ladies.
One of the things we haven't mentioned was your comeback record. You know which one I'm talking about?
He stopped loving her today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that song. I understand it took a long time to make that record. First of all, you didn't like the original the way it was written, did you?
It didn't take that long, but I know what you mean. They had finished up another verse in it. I carried it almost a year, or about a year, and went around singing it all the time, what I could remember of. And I went back to Billy Sherrill and told him that the song, well, after we first heard it, I told him I didn't think the song was finished. He needed the lady coming back one way or the other, either to his funeral or somewhere, you know. And that's where the last part, where Millie did the pretty high soprano stuff, or whatever you call it, and the talking, the narration part, the talking part, or whatever you call that. And they come back with that about 6 months later, and wrote that part and brought it to Billy Sherrill again, and I said, that's it. That's exactly what I had in mind, and that's we'll go in and cut it. So we did, and I told Billy, I said, Billy, it's too sad a song. They're not going to buy that. They wouldn't buy that. That's not the type of song they want to listen to. Boy, was I ever wrong, you know. It was just the biggest thing I guess I ever had. I wish we could find more. I wish more songs was written like that today.
He stopped loving her today. They placed her in a home. Soon they'll carry him away. He stopped loving her today. He stopped loving her